Welcome to the hidden side of Westeros, the realm of theories that even the three-eyed raven might find fascinating. Tonight, we'll explore the secret connections, ancient mysteries, and hidden truths that George R.R. Martin wove beneath the surface of his epic tale. Have you ever wondered what truly drove Aegon the Conqueror to unite the Seven Kingdoms, or questioned whether the White Walkers were born from an act of desperate magic? Perhaps you've pondered if Tyrion Lannister might carry the blood of dragons. In his veins, these aren't mere fan speculations, but carefully researched possibilities grounded in the rich lore of Ice and Fire. As you settle in and prepare for sleep, allow these theories to transport you deeper into the world you love, where prophecies whisper through time, ancient magic lingers in forgotten places, and the greatest truths often hide in plain sight. So close your eyes, quiet your mind, and journey with me now into the mysteries that bind the Seven Kingdoms. Theory 1. Aegon's Secret Dream, the hidden purpose of the conquest. Why did Aegon Targaryen truly conquer Westeros? History tells us of his ambition, his dragons, his desire to forge 7 kingdoms into one. But what if there was a deeper purpose? A burden of knowledge that would haunt the Targaryen dynasty for centuries? The truth may be more chilling than ambition alone. Aegon the Conqueror was driven by a prophetic dragon dream foretelling a cataclysmic second-long night, a vision of terrible winter gusting out of the distant north, bringing a darkness that would destroy all living things. This apocalyptic future could only be prevented, Aegon believed, if Westeros stood united under Targaryen leadership when the time came. Aegon himself named this prophetic vision the Song of Ice and Fire, suggesting he foresaw the eventual union of Stark and Targaryen bloodlines as crucial to humanity's survival. This profound secret was kept within the royal family, passed from king to heir, as a sacred duty more important than the crown itself. The Targaryens had powerful reasons to trust such dreams. A century before the conquest, Daenys the Dreamer foresaw the doom of Valyria, allowing the Targaryens to escape destruction by fleeing to Dragonstone. This historical precedent lent tremendous weight to Aegon's own vision. When viewed through this lens, many puzzling aspects of Aegon's reign take on new meaning. His surprisingly lenient treatment of conquered lords wasn't mere pragmatism, but urgent necessity. He needed to forge a realm that would endure for centuries until the prophesied threat emerged. His decision to adopt Westerosi customs rather than impose Valyrian ways suggests he prioritized stability over cultural dominance. Even more tellingly, after conquest, Aegon spent remarkably little time in King's Landing, instead traveling constantly throughout his new kingdom. Perhaps he was searching for additional signs or securing vital allies for the coming winter. His famous map table at Dragonstone, the Painted Table, gave unusual prominence to the lands beyond the Wall, potentially marking them as the source of the coming threat. Later Targaryen obsessions with prophecy, from Aerys Weir's mystical studies to Rhaegar's fixation on the prince that was promised, weren't random eccentricities, but continuations of Aegon's original mission. Rhaegar's fateful interest in Lyanna Stark may have been driven by his understanding that the promised prince would come from their joined bloodlines, making his actions not merely romantic but desperately purposeful. This theory casts 3 centuries of Targaryen rule in a profoundly different light, not as conquerors maintaining power for its own sake, but as sentinels standing guard against a threat only they fully understood. Their dragons, their marriages, their wars, all potentially shaped by the terrible knowledge of what awaited beyond the Wall. As you drift towards sleep, consider this. Perhaps the Game of Thrones was never truly about who would sit on the Iron Throne, but who would lead when winter finally came. Theory 2. The Children's Curse, creating the first White Walker from the dawn of time. We've told stories of monsters that lurk in the darkness. But the most terrifying monsters are not those born of nightmares. They're the ones we create ourselves. Through Bran Stark's Greensight visions, a shocking truth was revealed about the White Walkers that changes everything we thought we knew about Westeros. These harbingers of winter were never a natural race or ancient evil. They were weapons created by the children of the forest in an act of desperate magic against mankind. As the first men pushed deeper into the ancient forests, cutting down weirwood trees and threatening the children with extinction, the guardians of the forest made a terrible choice. In a sacred ceremony beneath a weirwood tree, a group of children bound a first man to the heart tree and drove a dragon-glass dagger into his heart. His eyes turned the blue of deep ice, and his flesh grew pale. The first White Walker was born. This revelation reframes the entire history of Westeros. The others weren't some external evil or primordial race, but the direct consequence of the children's bid for survival. It presents a haunting moral complexity. The children, so often portrayed as wise and harmonious protectors of nature, created monsters to defend themselves from human encroachment. The timing is significant. This act would have occurred during the wars between the First Men and the children, before the pact that brought peace between the two peoples. For thousands of years, the First Men had been steadily pushing the children toward extinction. The creation of the White Walkers represented a final catastrophic escalation in this ancient struggle. Evidence for this appears in multiple forms. The White Walkers demonstrate powers remarkably similar to those of the children. Both can animate. The dead, the others with whites, the children with the green seers in the Weirwood network, both possess forms of ice magic, and both are deeply connected to patterns and symbols. The spiral pattern the White Walkers create with corpses directly mirrors sacred formations used by the children in their rituals. The dragonglass dagger used in the ritual holds special significance. Dragonglass can kill White Walkers, suggesting poetic symmetry. They can be destroyed by the same substance that created them. This symmetry extends to their weakness to Valyrian steel, which legends say was forged with dragon fire and potentially ancient spells similar to those used by the children. Perhaps most chillingly, the White Walkers' methodical extermination of humans might not represent random malice, but a continuation of their original programming to protect the forest from mankind, twisted and corrupted over millennia into something far more nihilistic. The Night King's apparent fixation on Bran might even suggest he retains some awareness of his connection to the three-eyed raven and the children who made him. As you close your eyes, consider this. The greatest threat to Westeros was born not from evil, but from fear. The children's mistake, using dark magic to create a weapon of war, serves as a warning about the true cost of escalation in conflict. Sometimes the monsters we create to protect ourselves become the very things that destroy us. Theory 3. The Night of the Laughing Tree, Lyanna Stark's secret valor. Not all knights wear shining armor. Sometimes, the most gallant hearts hide behind makeshift shields and borrowed helmets. During the magnificent tourney at Harrenhal, a mystery knight appeared for a single day of competition. The Knight of the Bull, Laughing Tree, as they came to be known for their shield bearing a laughing weirwood face, defeated 3 knights in succession and then vanished like morning mist. The king's men found only an abandoned shield. The knight had disappeared completely. Who was this mysterious champion? The evidence points to a remarkable truth. Beneath that mismatched armor was none other than Lyanna Stark, the she-wolf of Winterfell. The tale comes to us through Mira Reed's campfire story to Bran Stark, recounting events her father Howland witnessed firsthand. At the tourney, 3 squires bullied the small-statured Crannogman Howland Reed. A wolf maid, clearly Lyanna, defended him verbally, but the humiliation continued. Later, a mystery knight appeared in the lists, short of stature, wearing ill-fitting armor cobbled together from different pieces. This Knight of the Laughing Tree challenged and defeated the three knights whose squires had tormented Howland. Instead of ransom, the mystery knight demanded only that they teach their squires honor, a punishment fitting the crime. When King Aerys II, paranoid about any disguised challengers, commanded the knight be unmasked, the knight had already disappeared. The evidence pointing to Lyanna is compelling. Ned's memories established Lyanna as an accomplished horsewoman who rode like a Northman, giving her the necessary skill to compete. Her slight build matches the knight's described stature. The weirwood shield symbolism connects perfectly to her northern heritage and faith in the old gods. The knight's demand for justice rather than material gain aligns with Lyanna's fierce sense of honor. Most significantly, Prince Rhaegar was tasked with finding the mystery knight. Though he reported failure, he returned with only the abandoned shield. Shortly thereafter, in a shocking moment that brought all laughter to an end, Rhaegar rode past his own wife to crown Lyanna Stark as the Queen of Love and Beauty with a wreath of winter roses. This sequence suggests Rhaegar discovered Lyanna was the knight, kept her secret from his father, and was so moved by her courage and honor that his interest in her began at that moment. Not as mere infatuation with her beauty, but admiration for her character and bravery. This adds profound depth to their relationship. They first connected not through superficial attraction, but through a shared sense of justice. The Knight of the Laughing Tree reveals Lyanna's true character beyond the limited descriptions we receive. She was not just beautiful and wild, as often described, but clever, skilled, and principled, willing to risk herself to right wrongs and defend the vulnerable. It suggests that Rhaegar, often portrayed as valuing prophecy above all, was equally moved by genuine displays of courage. As sleep begins to claim you, ponder this. This simple act of chivalry, performed in secret by a young woman in a world that rarely allowed women such agency, set in motion events that would reshape the Seven Kingdoms. Robert's rebellion, the fall of the Targaryens, and ultimately the birth of Jon Snow, all stemmed from this moment of connection between the Wolf Maid and the Dragon Prince. A secret that began with a laughing tree on a painted shield. Theory. For Rhaegar's grand plan at Harrenhal, history remembers Rhaegar Targaryen as many things: the last dragon, a skilled warrior, a melancholy prince obsessed with prophecy, and ultimately the man whose actions helped ignite Robert's rebellion. But what if the Crown Prince was playing a far deeper game than anyone realized? Beneath the pageantry and spectacle of the tourney, at Harrenhal, the grandest tournament in living memory, a secret council may have been forming. Far from being a love-struck prince who impulsively crowned Lyanna Stark, Rhaegar may have been orchestrating a careful plot to peacefully remove his father, the increasingly unstable King Aerys II, from the Iron Throne. The evidence begins with the tournament itself. Lord Whent of Harrenhal, who hosted the enormous gathering, could never have afforded such extravagance on his own. Historical accounts suggest that the true sponsor was Prince Rhaegar himself, operating through his friend, Lord Whent. But why? Would the Crown Prince secretly fund such an event? The answer lies in who attended. Nearly every great lord of the Seven Kingdoms journeyed to Harrenhal for the tournament, providing Rhaegar the perfect opportunity to quietly gauge support for a regime change. With all the realm's power gathered in one place, the prince could discreetly sound out potential allies away from his father's spies in King's Landing. Sir Barristan Selmy later reflected that Rhaegar eventually recognized his father's unfitness to rule. Even he saw that this was true. Barristan said of Rhaegar's acceptance that Aerys had to be stopped. By the time of the tourney, the king's behavior had grown increasingly erratic and cruel. He had burned several men alive, including Lord Stark's father and brother, and was obsessed with wildfire and plots against him. Intriguingly, the king had not initially planned to attend the tournament. Only after receiving whispers from his master of whisperers, Varys, that the gathering might be a plot against him, did Aerys decide to appear unexpectedly. This suggests Varys had uncovered something of Rhaegar's intentions. The prince's actions at the tournament take on new meaning in this light. His stunning decision to crown Lyanna Stark as Queen of Love and Beauty, passing over his own wife, might not have been merely a romantic gesture but a political signal. By honoring the Daughter of the North, Rhaegar could have been cementing an alliance with one of the realm's most powerful regions. If he intended to call a great council to remove his father, northern support would be essential. Further evidence comes from the curious deployment of the Kingsguard during Robert's Rebellion. 3 of the finest Kingsguard knights, including the legendary Sir Arthur Dayne, were absent from both King's Landing and the decisive Battle of the Trident. Instead, they guarded Lyanna Stark at the Tower of Joy under Rhaegar's orders. This unusual assignment suggests their true loyalty lay with Rhaegar, not Aerys. What Rhaegar likely envisioned was not violent rebellion, but a peaceful transition, calling a great council like those that had settled succession crises in the past. Such a council would almost certainly have removed the unstable Aerys and crowned Rhaegar, a prince widely respected for his wisdom, skill, and temperament. But history took a darker turn. Rhaegar's plan, whatever its details, collapsed when Lyanna disappeared with him and Brandon Stark rode to King's Landing, demanding the prince's head. Aerys's brutal execution of Brandon and Lord Rickard Stark transformed what might have been a bloodless coup into open rebellion. As you drift towards sleep, consider how differently the story of Westeros might have unfolded had Rhaegar's scheme succeeded. Instead of being remembered as the man who plunged the realm into war for love, he might have been celebrated as the king who saved the 7 kingdoms from his father's madness, a tragic hero whose greatest plans died with him on the Trident. Theory 5. The Valonqar Prophecy, a twist of fate. Prophecies in Westeros are dangerous things, misleading, double-edged, and often fulfilled in ways no one could foresee. None demonstrates this better than the Valonqar prophecy given to a young Cersei Lannister. As a girl, Cersei visited a woods witch named Maggie the Frog, who granted her 3 questions. After foretelling Cersei would marry the king rather than the prince, and predicting a younger queen would cast her down, Maggie delivered her most ominous prophecy. When your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you. Valonqar means little brother in High Valyrian. Cersei immediately assumed this referred to Tyrion, her younger brother, whom she had hated since birth. This conviction drove much of her cruelty toward him throughout their lives. But what if Cersei's interpretation was too narrow? The prophecy specifically says the Valonqar rather than your Valonqar, leaving open the possibility that this little brother might not be hers at all, but someone else's younger sibling. The realm is full of younger brothers, Stannis to Robert, Sandor to Gregor, Loras to Garlan, Bran and Rickon to Robb, and countless others. Even if we assume the Valonqar is indeed Cersei's brother, her conclusion that it must be Tyrion overlooks the obvious. Jaime, her twin, was born moments after Cersei, technically making him her little brother as well. The prophecy's fulfillment might come from the person she least suspects, her lover, her other half, the one person she has always trusted. The language of the prophecy itself contains further layers. When your tears have drowned you suggests Cersei will experience profound grief before her death, perhaps over the loss of her children. Another part of Maggie's prophecy, gold shall be their crowns, gold their shrouds. The image of hands around her throat echoes how Cersei has metaphorically been choking the realm with her rule. Some scholars of prophecy suggest an even more subtle interpretation. What if the Valonqar is not a person at all, but a symbol? Hands have featured prominently in Westerosi politics. The king's hand, the hand's tourney, the golden hand Jaime wears to replace his lost limb. Could hands refer to an institution rather than an individual? Or consider this, what if the prophecy is self-fulfilling? Cersei's lifelong fear of Tyrion has driven her to commit terrible acts against him, potentially creating the very enemy who might one day become her doom. Her fear of the prophecy might be the very thing that brings it to pass. In a broader sense, the Valonqar prophecy symbolizes how Cersei's life has been choking itself. Every little brother she has wronged, Tyrion, Jaime, the younger generation, she's harmed, has tightened the noose of fate around her neck. As you close your eyes, reflect on how our interpretations of destiny often reveal more about ourselves than about fate. In her certainty that Tyrion was the Valonqar, Cersei never considered that the hands that might one day take her life could be her twins, or even her own. Theory 6. The Lion with Dragon's Blood, Tyrion's hidden heritage. You are no son of mine. These final words from Tywin Lannister to Tyrion might carry a double meaning, far beyond the moment of patricide. What if Tyrion Lannister, the brilliant, bitter, complex dwarf who navigates the Game of Thrones through wit rather than strength, carries the blood of dragons in his veins? This theory suggests that Tyrion is not Tywin's son at all, but the product of an affair between Joanna Lannister and King Aerys II Targaryen. If true, it would make Tyrion a secret Targaryen, a dragon disguised as a lion, and would cast his entire life story in a new, tragic light. The historical foundation for this possibility lies in well-documented events. During Tywin and Joanna's wedding, King Aerys took unwanted liberties with the bride during the bedding ceremony. The incident was serious enough that Queen Rhaella immediately dismissed Joanna from her service as lady-in-waiting. Years later, when Joanna attended the anniversary tourney at King's Landing in 272 AC, Aerys publicly humiliated Tywin by asking if childbirth had ruined her breasts, prompting Tywin to attempt to resign as Hand, though Aerys refused this resignation. Tyrion was born in 273 AC, not long after this tourney, strongly suggesting Joanna had another encounter with Aerys during her visit. Joanna died giving birth to Tyrion, which means she took any secrets about his conception to her grave. Physical evidence offers subtle hints. While Jaime and Cersei are described as true lions, with their father's emerald eyes and golden hair, Tyrion's appearance differs markedly. His hair is described as so blonde, it appears almost white in certain light, reminiscent of Targaryen silver. More tellingly, his eyes are mismatched, one green, Lannister, and one so dark it appears black, potentially Targaryen. This heterochromia could symbolize his mixed heritage. Tyrion has always been fascinated by dragons, reading every book about them he could find as a child. In a moment that resonates deeply with this theory, when Tyrion finally encounters Daenerys' dragons in Meereen, he approaches them without the fear most men would show. He successfully removes their chains without being burned or attacked, a scene reminiscent of the Targaryen saying that the dragon knows its own. Thematically, this theory adds profound layers to Tyrion's relationship with Tywin. The great irony would be that Tywin's most capable child, the one who most inherited his political acumen and strategic thinking, was never his son at all. Meanwhile, his true children, Jaime and Cersei, failed to become the heirs he wanted. Tywin's lifelong rejection of Tyrion would gain an additional dimension. Perhaps some part of him always suspected the truth. Tyrion's self-identification as a bastard and his empathy for other outcasts would take on new meaning. His statement that all dwarfs are bastards in their father's eyes might be literally true in his case. His fascination with his uncle Gerion's quest for the lost Lannister ancestral sword, Bright Roar, contrasts with his personal journey to discover his own true heritage. As sleep begins to claim you, consider the bitter irony. If Tyrion is indeed Aerys's son, then in killing Tywin, he did not commit patricide at all. Yet the weight of kinslaying would still hang around his neck. For in this scenario, Daenerys Targaryen would be his half-sister, making his conflicted loyalties to her all the more poignant. Theory 7. The Great Northern Conspiracy. The North remembers. The North remembers. These words, whispered throughout the cold lands above the neck after the Red Wedding, might be more than just an expression of grief. They could signify a vast, patient conspiracy among the Northern Lords, a secret pact to appear loyal to. The Boltons, while plotting to restore House Stark to power. After Robb Stark's murder at the Twins, the North seemed to bow to Bolton rule. Roose Bolton became Warden of the North. His son Ramsay was legitimized, and the flayed man flew above Winterfell. To Southern eyes, the wolf had given way to the flayed man. But beneath this apparent submission lay a current of implacable Northern vengeance. The conspiracy reveals itself through subtle clues and suspicious behaviors. Consider Lord Wyman Manderley of White Harbor, outwardly loyal to the Iron Throne and the Boltons. He executed a prisoner he claimed was Davos Seaworth to prove his loyalty. Yet this execution was a charade. The real Davos was hidden away, while Lord Manderley secretly revealed his true allegiance. The North remembers, and the mummer's farce is almost done. My son is home. At Winterfell, for Ramsay Bolton's wedding, to Arya Stark, actually Jane Poole, the Northern Lords gathered ostensibly to celebrate. But something darker brewed beneath the surface. Wyman Manderley brought enormous pies to the feast and insisted on serving them himself, even requesting a song about the Rat Cook, a Night's Watch legend about a man who killed guests beneath his roof and was cursed for this violation of guest right. The implication is chilling. The pies contained the flesh of 3 missing Freys, Manderley's way of avenging the Red Wedding while maintaining the pretense of loyalty. The mountain clans, the Umbers, houses Flint, Norrie and Wool, all supposedly sworn to Bolton, showed signs of double dealing. Messengers traveled between these houses carrying secret communications. Lords whispered in corners during feasts. Snow fell heavily around Winterfell, trapping everyone inside, but Northerners know winter better than anyone. Perhaps the storm itself was part of their strategy, forcing a confined confrontation. Most tantalizing is the matter of Robb Stark's will. Before his death, the young wolf recognized the danger of leaving his kingdom without an heir. With Bran and Rickon presumed dead and Arya missing, Robb made a fateful decision. Though never explicitly shown in the text, strong evidence suggests he legitimized his half-brother Jon Snow and named him heir to the North. This document, witnessed by many Northern lords, vanished after the Red Wedding, but it may still exist, carried by loyalists like Maege Mormont or Galbart Glover, who were sent to the North before the massacre. The conspiracy has many possible leaders. Lady Barbary Dustin, despite her apparent hatred of Ned Stark, displays suspicious behavior at Winterfell. The Umbers are divided, with one branch openly supporting Bolton, while another holds back their strength. House Reed remains completely hidden in the swamps of the Neck, neither submitting nor openly rebelling. Any of these might be coordinating the grand strategy. And what is their plan? The Northern Lords might be slowly positioning their forces, feeding false information to the Boltons, quietly stockpiling supplies and waiting for the perfect moment to reveal their true allegiance. The heavy snows around Winterfell benefit those who know how to use them. Northerners have survived countless winters, while Bolton rule is new and uncertain. The conspiracy might aim to unite behind Jon Snow, with Robb's will legitimizing him, Rickon Stark, if rumors of his survival prove true, or even Sansa Stark, the last known surviving legitimate child of Ned. Whatever their choice, the goal remains the same, a Stark in Winterfell. As you drift towards sleep, remember the patience of Northern vengeance. Like winter wheat surviving beneath the snow, Northern loyalty to House Stark never died. It merely waited for the right moment to emerge. The North remembers, and memory in this cold land is as enduring as the wall itself. Theory 8. Summerhall's Tragedy. Fire and Prophecy. On a summer day in the year 259 AC, as bright as any in living memory, tragedy struck House Targaryen. The beautiful palace of Summerhall, the summer residence of the royal family, erupted in flames that consumed the structure and many of its inhabitants. Among the dead were King Aegon V Targaryen, his eldest son Duncan the Small, and the legendary knight Sir Duncan the Tall. Yet amid the ashes, a child was born, Prince Rhaegar, who entered the world as his family's ancestral seat burned around him. This juxtaposition of death and birth, of fire consuming the old while bringing forth the new, shaped Rhaegar's melancholy character for all his days. But what truly happened at Summerhall? Official histories remain suspiciously vague, with pages missing or damaged in key manuscripts. This theory suggests that the disaster was no accident, but the result of King Aegon V's deliberate attempt to hatch dragon eggs through a magical ritual, a catastrophic fusion of prophecy, ancient magic, and royal ambition. The evidence begins with Aegon V's known frustrations. Though considered a good and worthy king who genuinely cared for the small folk, Aegon struggled throughout his reign to implement reforms against the resistance of powerful lords. Eventually, he may have concluded that only with dragons, the traditional source of Targaryen power, could he overcome this opposition and achieve his vision for the realm. Fragmented accounts from Archmaester Gyldain hint at disturbing details: 7 eggs, pyromancers, wildfire, and flames that grew out of control. This strongly suggests that King Aegon gathered 7 dragon eggs, a sacred number in the faith of the Seven, and attempted to hatch them using wildfire and the expertise of the Alchemists' Guild. But why would a wise ruler take such a risk? The answer may lie in prophecy, specifically in the words of a woods witch known as the Ghost of High Heart, who was a companion to Jenny of Oldstones, who had married Aegon's son, Prince Duncan. This witch had prophesied that the prince that was promised would be born from the line of Aerys and Rhaella, Aegon's grandchildren. So convinced was Aegon by this prophecy that he arranged the marriage of his grandchildren against their wishes. An ironic choice for a man who had himself married for love against his father's wishes. Yet Aegon may have believed that dragons were necessary for this promised prince to fulfill his destiny of saving the world from darkness. The presence of multiple important figures at Summerhall that day supports the ritual theory. Why would Sir Duncan the Tall, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, be present unless something momentous was planned? Why gather the royal family, including a heavily pregnant Queen Rhaella, unless to witness what Aegon expected to be a triumphant rebirth of dragons? Whatever specific magic Aegon attempted, it failed catastrophically. Perhaps the wildfire burned too hot, or the pyromancers lost control of their substances, or maybe the magic itself rebelled against being forced. The palace was consumed, and with it, many Targaryens and their hopes. Yet something did awaken that day. Not dragons in the traditional sense, but perhaps the blood of the dragon in metaphorical form. Rhaegar was born in grief and smoke, fulfilling part of the prophecy about the prince that was promised being born amidst salt and smoke. The tragedy would haunt him. He was known to visit the ruins alone and sleep among the ashes, perhaps seeking understanding of the event that marked his birth. As you close your eyes, Consider how this cycle of ambition, prophecy, and tragedy defines the Targaryen legacy. Aegon V, attempting to bring back dragons to help the common people, instead brought fire and death to his own family. From these same flames emerged Rhaegar, obsessed with prophecy himself, who would eventually trigger Robert's rebellion and the fall of his house. Fire and blood indeed, the words of House Targaryen manifest in their darkest form. Theory 9. The Last Hero and Azor Ahai, one savior, many names. In the long darkness of winter, humans have always searched for light, both literal and symbolic. From Old Nan's tales in Winterfell to the Red Priest's sermons in Essos, legends speak of a great hero who once saved the world from endless night. But are these truly different stories, or merely different tellings of the same truth? This theory proposes that the legendary last hero from northern folklore and Azor Ahai from eastern myth were one and the same figure, a single savior remembered, differently across cultures separated by vast distances and thousands of years. In the north, Old Nan told Bran of the last hero who sought out the children of the forest during the long night, when darkness lasted a generation. His companions died one by one, his horse, then his dog, until he alone remained, wielding a sword against the terrible cold. With the help of the children, he eventually pushed back the others and brought the dawn. Meanwhile, across the Narrow, the followers of R'hllor speak of Azor Ahai, who forged a flaming sword called Lightbringer. The creation of this legendary weapon required a terrible sacrifice. Azor Ahai drove the blade through the heart of his beloved wife Nissa Nissa, tempering the steel with her soul. With this sword, he fought against the darkness and defeated. The similarities are striking. Both heroes emerged during a time of world-threatening darkness. Both faced impossible odds. Both ultimately triumphed, bringing light back to a world consumed by night. Even the weapons align. The last hero's dragonsteel sword could well be the same weapon as Lightbringer, remembered with different emphasis in different cultures. The theory gains strength when we consider other parallel myths from around the world. In Yitai, they tell of Yintar, who wielded a blade of star metal against the darkness. In the lands of the Rhoynar, the hero Hyrkoon saved humanity with a sword of fire. The legends of Asshai speak of a warrior with a red sword who drove back shadow. The specific details vary, but the core remains consistent. One hero, one darkness, one triumph. The world of ice and fire notes that such stories are widespread across cultures, appearing everywhere from the Summer Islands to the furthest reaches of Essos. This universal quality suggests a shared historical truth, a real event so momentous that it embedded itself in the collective memory of all humanity. Though details blurred and changed over the millennia, if true, this theory has profound implications for prophecies of the hero's return. The Red Priests seek Azor Ahai reborn, while northern legends hint at the return of the last hero. If these are indeed the same figure, then the promised savior might appear in unexpected forms or places. The prince or princess who was promised might emerge from any culture, fulfilling multiple prophecies simultaneously. Most intriguingly, if the original hero was known by many names and took many forms in legend, perhaps the reborn hero will be similarly multifaceted, not one person, but several, each playing a crucial role in the war against darkness. Perhaps Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, and others are all fragments of this promised hero, each representing different aspects of the original legend. As you drift into dreams, consider how truth transforms over time, especially when passed through countless generations across vast distances. The hero with 1,000 faces may return with 1,000 faces as well, recognized not by name or appearance, but by the light they bring back to a world threatened by endless night. Theory 10. Dawn, the original Lightbringer. In the ancient castle of Starfall, seat of House Dane, rests a sword unlike any other in Westeros. It is called Dawn, a blade as pale as milk glass, with an edge that still cuts like it did 10,000 years ago. Unlike the Valyrian steel of more recent noble houses, Dawn predates the Freehold and its Dragon Lord smiths. It was, according to legend, forged from the heart of a fallen star. This theory suggests that Dawn might actually be the legendary sword Lightbringer from the Age of Heroes, or at least the original weapon that inspired the Lightbringer legend. Perhaps the hero who ended the long night did so with this very sword, and afterward it found its home with the Danes of Starfall. The evidence begins with Dawn's unique properties. Unlike the dark, rippled patterns of Valyrian steel, Dawn glows. With a pale luminescence, its name itself evokes the end of darkness, the first light of morning after the longest night. This aligns perfectly with the legend of Lightbringer, the sword that brought the dawn after the long night. House Dane's sigil reinforces this connection. A white sword crossed with a falling star. Their ancestral title, Sword of the Morning, is bestowed only on Danes deemed worthy of wielding Dawn, suggesting the blade carries a burden of destiny greater than mere family heritage. This special selection process mirrors the prophetic elements surrounding Lightbringer and its destined wielder. In the Associ prophecy of Azor Ahai, the hero tempered Lightbringer with a loving sacrifice and drew a burning sword to push back darkness. While Lightbringer in myth glows red-hot, Dawn in story emits a pale glow. This difference might seem contradictory, but consider how details change across cultural translations. To the Red Priests of R'hllor, a fiery blade makes narrative sense. To the first men of Westeros, a sword made from a star might be remembered differently. Old Nan's tales mention dragon steel as one of the few substances that could slay the others. This term could well describe the metal of a fallen star, which would have properties different from both common steel and Valyrian steel. In this interpretation, dragon steel refers not to dragons at all, but to the celestial origin of the metal, falling from the sky like dragons themselves. The location of Starfall is also suggestive. Positioned at the mouth of the Torrentine River in Western Dawn, it stands at the edge of the known world during the Age of Heroes. If the last battle against the others took place far to the north, how did this legendary sword end up in Southern Dawn? Perhaps after the heroes' victory, the sword was brought south for safekeeping, away from the lands of winter where it had served its purpose. Intriguingly, when Sir Arthur Dayne died at the Tower of Joy, Ned Stark took the unusual step of returning Dawn to Starfall rather than keeping it as a prize of battle, as was common practice. This suggests Ned recognized something special about Dawn, perhaps an ancient understanding that this sword belonged to its house not by right of possession, but by right of destiny. If Dawn is indeed Lightbringer, it might explain Rhaegar Targaryen's close friendship with Arthur Dayne. Rhaegar, obsessed with the prophecy of the prince that was promised, would have been drawn to the man wielding what might be the original Lightbringer. This connection could have influenced Rhaegar's decisions, leading to Robert's rebellion. As sleep begins to claim you, imagine the symmetry of this possibility. The sword that once drove back the darkness still exists, quietly guarded by House Dayne, awaiting the time when night falls again, and a new sword of the morning might take up the blade that brings the dawn. Perhaps the hero's weapon never left the world at all. It simply waits, pale as starlight, for the darkness to return. Theory 11. The Great Empire of the Dawn and the Long Night. Beyond the free cities, beyond the Dothraki Sea, beyond even Korth, The Queen of Cities, lie the remnants of ancient civilizations whose glory has faded into myth. Chief among these forgotten powers was the great Empire of the Dawn, a vast, advanced realm that may have preceded even the rise of Valyria and Old Geese. This theory proposes that the cataclysmic Long Night, the generation of darkness that nearly destroyed the world, was directly linked to the fall of this magnificent empire. It suggests that a cosmic sin committed in the distant East brought darkness upon the entire world, connecting the mythologies of Westeros and Essos in a single terrible event. According to the fragmentary histories of Yi Ti, the Great Empire of the Dawn was ruled by god-emperors who wore gemstone crowns and commanded powerful magic. For 10,000 years, this civilization flourished under their rule. The empire ended when the Amethyst Empress was murdered by her brother, who proclaimed himself the Bloodstone Emperor and ushered in a reign of terror. This usurper practiced dark arts and enslaved his people. Most transgressive of all, he cast down the traditional gods of Yi Ti and began worshipping a black stone that had fallen from the sky, likely a meteorite with strange properties. This cosmic betrayal is said to have so angered the gods that the sun turned its face from the earth for a lifetime, bringing the Long Night. Halfway across the world, Westerosi legends tell of the Long Night, when darkness fell for a generation. The seas froze, and the others descended from the lands of always winter with their armies of the dead. These seemingly separate mythologies describe the same global catastrophe from different cultural perspectives. The timing aligns perfectly. Yiddish records place the blood betrayal roughly 8,000 years ago, precisely when Westerosi tradition dates the Long Night. Such agreement across vast distances suggests a real historical event of worldwide impact. The connection deepens when we consider celestial symbolism. The Yiddish myth speaks specifically of the sun hiding its face, while Westerosi legends emphasize the coming of night and cold. Both describe darkness, but in culturally specific terms. Eastern cultures focusing on the sun's disappearance, Western myths emphasizing the night's dominance. What might the nature of this connection be? Perhaps the Bloodstone Emperor's dark magic, his worship of the fallen star, somehow disrupted the natural balance of seasons, triggering both the literal darkness of the Long Night and unleashing the others as a cosmic punishment for his transgressions. The strange glassy black stone found in ancient structures around the world, from Asshai to Yin to the Sea Stone Chair, might be fragments of the same meteorite the Emperor worshipped. More provocatively, some suggest the Bloodstone Emperor might have been the first other, that his unholy communion with the Black Stone transformed him into something inhuman, a being of ice who fled or was banished to the furthest north. If true, the Night King, or the Great Other of R'hllor's faith, might originally have been a man whose ambition and cruelty transcended humanity. This cosmic connection between East and West extends to the heroes who ended the Long Night. While Westeros remembers the last hero, the legends of Yi Ti tell of a woman with a monkey's tail, perhaps a metaphorical description of a foreigner who reunited the sun and the moon, bringing back the light. These may be regional memories of a worldwide effort to end the darkness. As you close your eyes, consider how this theory weaves together the disparate mythologies of Martin's world. The Long Night wasn't just a random natural disaster, but the consequence of human evil, a cautionary tale about the price of betrayal and dark ambition. Just as the fall of the Great Empire brought darkness to the world, perhaps its echoes still resonate in the Game of Thrones, where betrayal and ambition continue to cast long shadows over the living. Theory 12. The Stark Ancestor, who became the Night's King. In the deepest part of winter, when the wind howls against the walls of Winterfell, Old Nan tells children terrifying tales of the Night's King, a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch who fell in love with a woman with skin as white as the moon and eyes like blue stars. This commander declared himself king, enslaved his black brothers through sorcery, and performed human sacrifices at the Night Fort until finally being defeated by the king in the north and the king beyond the wall. But Old Nan whispers something else, something almost too terrible to contemplate. He was a Stark, she says, a brother to the king in the north. This theory explores the chilling possibility that the legendary Night's King was indeed a Stark of Winterfell, possibly named Brandon, whose unholy union with an other-like woman created a terrible legacy that the Starks have been guarding against ever since. The evidence begins with the consistency of Old Nan's information. While often delivering her tales with dramatic embellishment, the core historical facts of her stories frequently prove accurate. When she says the Night's King was a Stark, we should take note. Moreover, we learn that after his defeat, all records of the Night's King's name were destroyed, a punishment called damnatio memoriae, or the condemnation of memory. Such extreme measures suggest a profound shame that the family wished to expunge from history. What greater shame for the honorable Starks than having one of their own turn to darkness? If the Night's King was indeed a Stark, his transgression gains additional symbolic weight. The Starks have always been positioned as the antithesis to the cold. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell suggests they serve as a ward against winter's worst aspects. For a Stark to embrace the cold, to take another as his bride, would represent the ultimate perversion of their family's purpose. The timeline offers further support. The Night's King is said to have ruled during the Age of Heroes, after the wall was built but before the Andal invasion, placing him roughly 8,000 to 6,000 years before the current story. During this period, the Starks were already kings in the north, making it entirely plausible that a younger Stark son might join the Night's Watch and rise to become Lord Commander. The defeat of the Night's King required an alliance between the king in the north, likely the Night's King's brother, and Joramun, the king beyond the wall. This unusual cooperation between traditional enemies emphasizes the existential threat the Night's King posed and suggests the Stark King felt personal responsibility for his brother's actions. If true, this theory adds profound depth to the Stark family motto, "Winter is coming." These might not be merely words warning of harsh weather, but a reminder of their family's dark secret, that once a Stark brought winter upon the world, and the family must remain vigilant lest it happen again. It also casts a new light on the Stark connection to the others that appears in the current story. The Night King in the show shows particular interest in Bran Stark. Jon Snow with Stark blood appears destined to confront the others. Perhaps there is an ancient connection, a blood tie or magical link between the Starks and the cold forces beyond the wall. As you drift towards sleep, consider the weight of such heritage. For thousands of years, the Starks have guarded the North against the return of the Long Night. But what if they guard not just against an external threat, but against the darkness in their own bloodline? What if every Stark carries within them both the potential to resist the cold and the potential to embrace it? In this light, the Stark words become not just a warning, but a confession whispered through centuries. Winter is coming, and once it came through us. Theory 13. The Shadowlands, dragons from Asshai. The origins of dragons have long been attributed to the Valyrian Freehold, where dragon lords bound fire-breathing beasts to their will and forged an empire spanning half the known world. But what if this commonly accepted history is merely the latest chapter of a much older story? What if dragons did not originate in Valyria at all, but in the mysterious Shadowlands beyond Asshai? This theory challenges the Valyrian-centric view of history, proposing that the Valyrian dragon lords were borrowers rather than originators. that they acquired their dragons or the knowledge to tame them from the ancient civilization of Asshai. The evidence lies primarily in obscure texts and fragmentary legends from the East. In Asshai, shadowbinders and mystics maintain an oral tradition claiming that dragons first emerged from the Shadowlands in the volcanic mountains beyond their city. According to their tales, dragons were hatched from the shadow and brought into the light long before Valeria's rise to power. The world of ice and fire lends credence to this possibility, noting that Asshai's folklore insists dragons emerged from the Shadowlands and were later brought to Valeria before the rise of the Freehold. While the Meisters dismiss this as Eastern superstition, they offer no compelling alternative explanation for where dragons originally came from. Geographical evidence supports the theory. The Shadowlands feature volcanic activity similar to the 14 Flames of Valeria, providing the heat necessary for dragon eggs to hatch. The region is also steeped in ancient magics long forgotten in the West. Even in the current era, Asshai remains a center of magical knowledge, particularly regarding fire and shadow manipulation, precisely the domains that would aid in dragon taming. Archaeological finds strengthen the case. Dragon bone artifacts far older than Valeria have been discovered throughout the Shadowlands. Some Asshai structures incorporate dragon motifs that predate Valerian architecture by thousands of years, most tellingly beneath the ancient city of Stygai, the corpse city, so feared that even shadowbinders fear to enter it. Explorers have reported colossal skeletal remains, unlike any known species of dragon, suggesting primitive or ancestral forms. If dragons originated in the Shadowlands, how did they come to Valeria? Several pathways are possible. Valerian shepherds, before becoming dragon lords, might have discovered eggs or hatchlings through trade with eastern caravans. Alternatively, a forgotten expedition of Valerians might have traveled to Asshai specifically seeking the rumored fire beasts. Most intriguing is the possibility that Asshai scholars or priests deliberately introduced dragons to Valeria for their own inscrutable purposes. This Eastern origin would explain several puzzling aspects of dragon lore. The inconsistent success of Valerian attempts to hatch dragon eggs might result from incomplete understanding of techniques developed in Asshai over countless generations. The strange affinity between dragons and people of certain bloodlines might reflect ancient magical pacts first made in the Shadowlands. Even the docility of Valerian dragons compared to the untamed fire drakes of legend might indicate that Asshai magic had already partially domesticated the species. For the Targaryens, this theory carries profound implications. Their ancestors, fleeing Valeria with a few precious eggs, might have been preserving not just their family's future, but the last remnants of magic far more ancient than even their freehold. When Daenerys hatches her dragon eggs in Khal Drogo's funeral pyre, she might be unconsciously recreating rituals first performed in the shadow beyond Asshai millennia before. As you drift towards sleep, consider how history is shaped by the victors and survivors. The Valyrians, with their world-spanning empire, wrote themselves into history as the first dragon lords. But in the Shadowlands, where ancient secrets still whisper through ruins older than time, perhaps the true origins of dragons remain, waiting to be rediscovered by those brave or foolish enough to venture into darkness. Theory 14. The Dooms. Trigger, faceless men's final gift. The doom of Valeria remains the greatest catastrophe in recorded history, a cataclysm of such magnitude that in a single day, the mightiest civilization ever built was reduced to smoking ruins. The 14 Flames, the chain of volcanoes that powered Valerian magic, erupted simultaneously. The peninsula shattered, the land was swallowed by the sea, and 4 centuries of dominance ended in hours. Natural disaster is the assumed cause. A case of geological instability finally reaching its breaking point. But what if the doom was no accident? This theory suggests that the cataclysm was deliberately triggered by the Faceless Men as their ultimate act of vengeance against Valyrian slave masters. The Faceless Men's own history provides the foundation for this theory. They originated in the deepest mines beneath Valyria, where slaves from countless conquered nations toiled in hellish conditions, harvesting the precious ores and minerals that fueled the Freehold's magic. In this crucible of suffering, the first Faceless Man brought the gift of merciful death to a fellow slave who prayed for release. From that first kill grew a secret society dedicated to serving the many-faced god. The House of Black and White teaches that the Faceless Men heard the prayers of slaves across Valyria and gave their gift to those who asked. In time, these assassins extended their services beyond the slaves, becoming skilled at ending the lives of virtually anyone, including, significantly, their masters. The critical clue comes from what a former Faceless Man reveals. After becoming proficient at killing individuals, the Faceless Men eventually turned their attention to Valyria itself. The text heavily implies that they orchestrated the doom as the ultimate gift of death to the heart of slavery. But how could assassins, however skilled, trigger a geological catastrophe? The answer may lie in the unique nature of Valyrian magic and the 14 Flames. Historical accounts suggest that Valyria's sorcerer lords used spells to control the volcanic forces beneath their peninsula, tapping their power while preventing eruptions. These spells required constant maintenance by the Dragon Lord families. Archmaester Marwyn and other scholars of the arcane have suggested that if enough of these sorcerer lords died simultaneously, the magical safeguards would fail catastrophically. The Faceless Men, with their unmatched talent for undetectable assassination, could have engineered precisely such a scenario, killing key mages across all the Dragon Lord families in a single coordinated strike. Timing strengthens the case. The doom occurred after centuries of increasingly brutal slavery, as Valyrian expansion reached its height. The Faceless Men, working in secret for generations, might have spent decades preparing their masterstroke, placing agents in every Dragon Lord household, learning the critical nodes of Valyria's magical infrastructure and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If true, this theory reframes the doom as an act of terrible justice, slaves finally breaking the chains that bound them, even at the cost of destroying the world they knew. It explains why the Faceless Men still speak of old Valyria with quiet significance, and why they charge exorbitant prices for the deaths of great men. They know the true cost of changing the world through targeted death. The theory has darker implications as well. If the Faceless Men once brought down Valyria, what other great powers might they be subtly undermining? Their presence in Braavos, the secret city founded by escaped slaves, takes on new significance. Perhaps they remain vigilant against any civilization that might follow Valyria's path toward magical domination through human suffering. As you close your eyes, consider the brutal symmetry of this possibility. The greatest empire the world has ever known, brought low not by external enemies or natural forces, but by the very people they had deemed least significant, the slaves they never bothered to see as human. The doom becomes not just a historical tragedy, but a warning that true power sometimes lies in the hands of those who seem most powerless, and that justice, however delayed, will eventually find its moment. Theory 15. The Mummer's Dragon. Young Aegon's true lineage. In the later books of A Song of Ice and Fire, a young man appears in the narrative claiming a birthright thought long extinguished. Introduced as young Griff, he later reveals himself to be Aegon Targaryen, son of Prince Rhaegar and Princess Elia, supposedly rescued from the sack of King's Landing as an infant, while another child died in his place. With golden hair dyed blue to hide his identity, educated by exiled lords and knights, he returns to Westeros to reclaim the Iron Throne as the rightful heir. His story seems perfect, almost too perfect. This theory suggests that young Aegon is not a true Targaryen at all, but rather an impostor, a mummer's dragon as prophesied to Daenerys in the House of the Undying. He may be a Blackfyre descendant from a cadet branch of House Targaryen, or even a common boy of Valyrian appearance, groomed to play the role of the returning prince. The evidence begins with prophecy. Daenerys is warned to beware the mummers, and dragon, a false dragon, or a dragon belonging to a mummer actor. Varys, who orchestrated young Aegon's escape and education, began his career as a traveling mummer in Essos. The connection is unmistakable. Varys is the mummer, and Aegon is his dragon, a puppet king he can control. Historical context strengthens the theory. The male Blackfyre line was supposedly extinguished when Ser Barristan Selmy slew Maelys the Monstrous during the War of the Ninepenny Kings. However, female line descendants could still exist in Essos. These would carry Blackfyre blood with the distinctive Valyrian features, silver hair and purple eyes, making them ideal candidates for impersonating a Targaryen prince. Illyrio Mopatis, the wealthy Pentoshi magister who shelters young Aegon, provides further clues. He keeps the supposedly Blackfyre sword in his possession and speaks of Aegon with unusual emotional investment, at one point even weeping while discussing the boy's future. This suggests a personal stake beyond political maneuvering. Perhaps Aegon is related to him through his mysterious Serra, a Lysene woman with Valyrian features whom Illyrio loved and lost. Most tellingly, the Golden Company, a mercenary group founded by Blackfyre supporters in exile, breaks its contract to support young Aegon's cause. This famous company, which has never broken a contract before, was founded specifically to seat a Blackfyre on the Iron Throne. Their unexpected allegiance to Aegon Targaryen makes far more sense if he secretly carries Blackfyre blood. The mechanics of the deception are plausible. During the sack of King's Landing, Varys could have arranged for a common baby with Valyrian features to be smuggled out, claiming it was the prince. No one who could reliably identify the infant Aegon survived the sack, and the real prince's body was reportedly damaged beyond recognition. The switch would have been virtually undetectable. If Aegon is indeed a pretender, it adds layers of irony to the overarching narrative. Robert's rebellion was built on a lie that Rhaegar kidnapped Lyanna, but the counter-rebellion to restore the Targaryens would be built on a different lie. Houses declaring for young Aegon would unknowingly support the very bloodline, Blackfyre, they once fought against. From a narrative perspective, this false Aegon serves as a foil to Jon Snow, one a secret Targaryen pretending to be common, the other possibly a common boy, or Blackfyre, pretending to be Targaryen. Both raised in exile from the court, both groomed for leadership, but with fundamentally different understandings of what makes a good ruler. As Sleep claims you, ponder the nature of identity and legitimacy in the Game of Thrones. If Aegon believes himself the true king and rules wisely, does his blood truly matter? Or is the right to rule determined not by hidden heritage, but by the ability to win the throne and hold it? The Mummer's Dragon reminds us that in Westeros, perception often matters more than truth, and those who control the story control the realm. Theory 16. The Maester's Conspiracy Against Magic. In the quiet halls of the Citadel in Old Town, thousands of Maesters study, teach, and preserve knowledge, With their rattling chains and black robes, they serve as healers, counselors, and record keepers throughout the Seven Kingdoms. But beneath their scholarly exterior may lie a secret agenda centuries in the making, the systematic elimination of magic from the world. This theory proposes that the Archmaesters of the Citadel have been quietly orchestrating the decline of magic in Westeros, especially the extinction of dragons, as part of a deliberate campaign to promote rationalism and secure their own influence. The evidence comes primarily from an unlikely source, Archmaester Marwyn, called Marwyn the Mage, for his unconventional interest in the arcane. Unlike his colleagues, Marwyn traveled to Asshai and studied mystical arts typically shunned by the Citadel. When Samwell Tarly arrives in Old Town with tales of White Walkers, Marwyn makes a shocking accusation about his own order. "Who do you think killed all the dragons last time around?" he asks Sam rhetorically. "Gallant dragon slayers armed with swords. The world the Citadel is building has no place in it for sorcery or prophecy or glass candles, much less for dragons." This loaded question implies the Maesters themselves orchestrated the dragon's extinction. While initially seeming far-fetched, historical patterns support the possibility. After the Dance of the Dragon's civil war weakened House Targaryen, their remaining dragons began dying under suspicious circumstances. During the reign of Aegon III, aptly named the Dragonbane, the last dragons grew sickly, produced infertile eggs, and eventually died out entirely. Aegon III surrounded himself with Maesters as advisors, giving them unprecedented access to the dragons and their care. If the Maesters harbored an institutional bias against magic, this position would have allowed them to subtly sabotage dragon husbandry, perhaps by tampering with their food, habitat, or breeding practices. The Citadel's philosophical stance lends credibility to this theory. Since its founding, the Order has championed rational knowledge over superstition. The Maesters' skepticism toward magic is well documented. Most dismiss tales of dragons, children of the forest, and others as exaggerations or myths. This skepticism could easily evolve into active suppression if magic were viewed as a threat to their worldview. Consider also the political implications of dragons. With dragons, the Targaryens maintained absolute power, unchecked by normal feudal constraints. Without dragons, they became merely first among equals and far more reliant on the Council of Maesters. The extinction of dragons dramatically increased the Maesters' relative influence in the governance of the Seven Kingdoms. Further evidence lies in the glass candles. These obsidian artifacts from Valyria had been dormant for centuries, unable to be lit, a fact Maesters used to demonstrate magic's death to new novices. Yet in recent years, as magic returns to the world, glass candles burn again. Significantly, Marwyn possesses one and uses it secretly, hiding this knowledge from his colleagues, suggesting the official Citadel position remains staunchly against magical resurgence. The conspiracy may extend beyond dragons to other magical traditions. The gradual decline of the Alchemists' Guild, the disappearance of wargs and skin changers from the north, even the decreasing effectiveness of mystical healing, all could potentially be linked to the Maesters' subtle campaign to discredit and eliminate magical knowledge in favor of their own scholarly authority. If true, this theory presents the Maesters not as benevolent preservers of knowledge, but as its gatekeepers, determining which wisdom survives and which fades into obscurity. Their chain-forging ritual takes on sinister symbolism, with each link representing a field of study mastered. Maesters metaphorically chain knowledge, restricting its flow rather than facilitating it. As you drift towards sleep, consider the implications for the coming conflicts. If winter brings the others, if prophecies of Azor Ahai's return prove true, if Daenerys and her dragons represent magic's resurgence, then the Citadel may face a difficult choice. Will they adapt their worldview to incorporate the undeniable return of magic? Or will they continue their centuries-long campaign, attempting to extinguish magical forces even as existential threats loom? The grey robes of the Maesters hide not just scholars, but perhaps the most patient conspirators in all of Westeros, men who measured their grand design not in years, but in generations. Theory 17. Bran the Builder's Hand in Storm's End. On the eastern coast of the Stormlands stands Storm's End, a castle unlike any other in Westeros. Its massive drum tower and curtain wall, crafted from single blocks of stone, fitted so tightly that wind cannot penetrate the seams, have withstood the fury of countless storms for thousands of years. According to legend, it was built by Doran, Godsgrief, the first Storm King, who defied the gods by marrying the daughter of the sea god and the wind goddess. After his bride was taken by her parents' wrath, Doran declared war on the gods themselves. He built castle after castle, each stronger than the last, only to see them all destroyed by terrible storms. Only his seventh attempt, the current Storm's End, withstood the divine fury. But how could a primitive Storm King engineer such an architectural marvel? This theory suggests he had help from the most renowned builder in the Age of Heroes, Brandon Stark, known as Bran the Builder, who also raised Winterfell and the Wall. Moreover, it proposes that Bran the Builder may have incorporated magical protections into Storm's End, similar to those at the Wall. Ancient spells woven into the stones that ward against more than mere weather. The historical foundation for this theory appears in fragmented legends. The World of Ice and Fire notes explicitly that some stories say Brandon the Builder aided Doran Godsgrief with the construction of Storm's End. Northern ballads tell of young Bran traveling south for this purpose. The timing aligns perfectly with the Age of Heroes, when both men would have lived. The most compelling evidence lies in the castle itself. Storm's End's impossibly thick, curved walls represent engineering knowledge far beyond what the first men typically possessed. The seamless construction, with no visible mortar or joining compounds, mirrors other structures attributed to Bran the Builder, particularly the Wall and Winterfell's oldest sections. These architectural similarities suggest a single mind behind their design. More intriguing still is Storm's End's magical reputation. During Stannis Baratheon's siege, Melisandre notes that the castle's ancient spells prevent her shadow magic from penetrating its walls. There are older and stronger spells woven into the stones of Storm's End, she says, spells that no Storm King could have cast, but that might well have been placed by Bran the Builder, who worked with the Children of the Forest to raise the Wall. This magical aspect transforms Storm's End from merely a well-built fortress into something far more significant, a southern counterpart to the Wall, designed not just to withstand storms, but perhaps to hold back some more ancient threat. The castle's location, facing the narrow sea toward distant Essos, raises intriguing possibilities. Perhaps Bran the Builder recognized threats from more directions than just the northern ice. The collaboration between Brandon Stark and Doran Godsgrief would also represent something profound, cooperation between First Men kingdoms during the Age of Heroes, when legends typically emphasize conflict and individual achievement. It suggests a network of ancient alliances, with the Starks extending their protective influence far beyond the north. For House Baratheon, who eventually claimed Storm's End as their seat after Aegon's conquest, this connection to Bran the Builder adds a layer of irony. The Baratheons, through Robert's rebellion, eventually displaced the Targaryens, but their own ancestral seat may owe its existence to the same northern magic and bloodline that would later become central to the realm's fate through Jon Snow. And Bran Stark, As sleep begins to claim you, imagine the young Brandon Stark of ancient days, traveling south to help a grieving king protect his people from divine wrath. Consider how the magic of the children and the practical knowledge of the first men might have merged in this great work, and wonder what other secrets might lie dormant in the ancient stones of Storm's End, waiting for the right moment to reveal their purpose. Theory 18. The mystery of Old Town's Black Stone. In the oldest part of the oldest city in Westeros lies an architectural enigma that has puzzled Meisters for centuries. The foundation of the High Tower, the Great Lighthouse of Old Town, is not made of the same pale stone as its soaring upper levels. Instead, it rests upon a massive fortress-like base of oily black stone, a substance unlike any other building material in the Seven Kingdoms. This ancient black stone fortress predates not only House Hightower, but possibly all human settlement in Westeros. No chisel marks mar its surface. No mortar joins its massive blocks. Its seamless construction suggests techniques far beyond those available to the first men or even the later Andal invaders. This theory explores the unsettling possibility that the Black Stone Foundation was built by a forgotten civilization, perhaps the enigmatic Deep Ones of legend, or the mysterious Maze Makers that existed in Westeros long before recorded history, leaving behind structures that hint at a vast and alien knowledge now lost to time. The evidence begins with first-hand descriptions from Meisters who have studied the structure. The stone is described as greasy or oily to the touch, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. This matches descriptions of similar black stone structures found around the world. The 5 forts of Yi Ti, the ancient city of Yein in Sothorios, the Seastone Chair of the Iron Islands, and buildings in Asshai by the Shadow. All these structures share 3 qualities. They are impossibly ancient. They consist of this same strange black material, and local legends associate them with dark or troubling origins. The global distribution of these buildings suggests a civilization or influence that once spanned much of the known world, leaving behind only these imperishable remnants. Who might have built such structures? Maester Theron's controversial text, Strange Stone, proposed that the fortress was raised by the Deep Ones, a purported race of fish-like humanoids who rose from the sea in ancient times. Though dismissed by the Citadel as fanciful, Theron noted the similarity between the black stone of the Hightower base and the Seastone Chair, both located near major harbors, both associated with legends of beings from the sea. Archmeister Quillian offered a different theory, suggesting the fortress was built by the Maze Makers of Lorath, whose labyrinthine constructions show similar architectural techniques. However, this raises more questions than it answers, as little is known about the Maze Makers themselves beyond their eventual extermination by the Andals. The most troubling aspect of the Black Stone is its resemblance to dragonglass, obsidian, in appearance, but not in properties. While dragonglass is brittle and volcanic in origin, the Black Stone is harder than steel and seemingly impervious to time. Some Meisters whisper that it might be related to the greasy black stone said to have fallen from the sky, meteorites. Worshipped by ancient cultures, including the Bloodstone Emperor of Yi Ti's legend, the purpose of the original structure remains unknown. Was it a fortress against some ancient enemy? A temple to forgotten gods? A trading post for a seafaring civilization? The Hightowers themselves seem uninterested in these questions, having simply built atop the foundation and incorporated it into their ancestral seat. Perhaps most significant is what the Black Stone Foundation tells us about Old Town itself. The city's location, at the mouth of the Honeywine with access to the Sunset Sea, was clearly valuable not just to the first men and later settlers, but to whoever raised the original Black Fortress. This suggests continuity of purpose. Across thousands of years, with each successive civilization recognizing the strategic importance of this site. The citadel itself, seat of all learning in Westeros, stands in Old Town's shadow, perhaps unwittingly built near one of the greatest mysteries in the known world. The irony is palpable. Generations of Maesters have studied and catalogued knowledge, while literal steps away from an artifact that challenges everything they think they know about Westerosi history. As you close your eyes for the night, consider what might lie beneath other cities and castles of the known world. Perhaps the history we know is merely the visible portion of a vast iceberg with older, stranger truths submerged beneath. The black stone beneath the Hightower reminds us that even in a world of dragons and winter magic, some mysteries remain too deep for easy understanding. Echoes of civilizations so ancient that even the oldest families of Westeros are newborns. By comparison, as the night deepens and sleep approaches, let these theories rest gently in your mind. The world of ice and fire is rich with possibilities, layers of mystery and meaning that extend far beyond the surface narrative. Like old Nan's tales by the hearth, these ideas invite us to look deeper, to question what we think we know, and to wonder at the intricate tapestry George R.R. Martin has woven. Whether considering Aegon's prophetic dreams, the origin of the White Walkers, or the strange black stone beneath Old Town, we find ourselves engaged in the same activity as the characters we love, piecing together fragments of the past to better understand the present. In doing so, we participate in one of the central themes of A Song of Ice and Fire, that history is neither simple nor settled, but constantly reinterpreted through new perspectives. Perhaps some of these theories will prove true as the story continues. Others may remain tantalizingly unconfirmed, living in that shadowy realm between canon and conjecture. But all of them enrich our experience of Martin's world, inviting us to see connections and patterns across thousands of pages and thousands of years of fictional history. As you drift into dreams, perhaps you'll find yourself walking the crypts of Winterfell, or standing atop the wall at dawn, or watching dragons circle above the Shadowlands. In these dreams, may you discover your own theories, your own connections, for the Game of Thrones continues even in our imagination, where winter and summer, ice and fire dance in endless, fascinating patterns. Sleep well and remember, the night is dark and full of theories.